So I want to talk today a little bit about success. It's been on my mind. It feels like it's something that's been coming up a lot. And I wanted to kind of start with the problem, if you will. So here's what happened to me. I was working in finance, and I was working for a smaller company, and the owner said to me, and I'm just going to quote him. He goes, "I just want you to be a mini me. Just basically be a mini me, do everything the way I would do it, and you'll be fine. You'll have tons of success. You'll make more money here than you've made anywhere else." And I was like, dude, I want success. So that's great. Yeah. Show me how. He's like, great. Just come with me to lots of meetings and, see how I do things and become a mini me, and this will work out great. And I said, sounds good. And that's what I tried to do. And as time progressed, it became increasingly obvious that no matter what I did, it wasn't exactly what he wanted, or it didn't look exactly how he would have done it. And I got to a point where I was like, I don't think anybody can accurately or completely copy another person to find success this way. But then I realized that a lot of the world is actually trying to do that. A lot of the people are like, look, I just want success. I want money. I don't want to have to worry about this anymore. I'm willing to read a book or copy somebody else to get it because I don't think I can do it myself. And I think therein lies the problem, that people are willing to sacrifice who they are to try to find success by copying somebody else. And I want to dive into that with you today and talk about that a little bit. As I'm talking about this and explaining, kind of my experience, tell me, what's that bringing up for you?
Dude, yeah, I actually just was going to get curious, how long did you try to be a mini me?
Dude, I tried for about a year. And it was weird because even when I did things exactly the way he had done them in the past, he would say, well, but this situation is different from the other situation because of this, which means I would have done it this way. And it's like, it always felt like, he was comparing my ability to be like him to a perfect version of himself that he wasn't. Does that make sense? Mm-hmm. So it wasn't even like I wasn't able to be like him, because I felt like I was at times I was pretty close, but in his mind, he was so much better than he actually was that I couldn't even get. He wanted me to pretend to be the perfect person he wasn't. And how was I going to get there? Do you know what I mean? Because it's not I can't model that behavior because it didn't exist.
Yeah.
So, and I feel like there are books out there that I've read, because I've been on that track for a long time. I just wanted success. I wanted to take care of my family. I wanted to make sure that we were financially, stable and taken care of. I've been chasing success for a long time. And I was willing to sacrifice just about anything, short of, robbing banks or doing something completely immoral to get it. And I wasn't happy.
That's like the golden question too, is like, even if you figured out how to do it, how to be exactly like him, it's like, would you be happy even then?
I think I'd be even more miserable, because it would validate that I had no space, that I and my natural talents had no value, that the only value I had was in pretending to be somebody I wasn't.
Like the value you have is how much you can be like not you.
Yeah.
It's like, okay.
Dude,
I think
crushing.
I think that shows up in business a ton.
Yeah.
And then I think it also, that sneaks into your life. I think for a lot of people, possibly especially men, I'm not sure. But it feels like men, there's this feeling of like the world is projecting an expectation on like what a good man and a good father does. And I think it can be easy to feel that way in your whole life. Like, okay, I just need to be this certain thing. And it kind of ignores what am I naturally good at? Or like, who am I? Do I get to show up? I think another form where that shows up would be with father's expectations, right? Mm-hmm. Am I disappointing my dad? And we've talked about this before, but like how many how many men out there are not feeling like they disappoint their dad? How many men out there trust that their dad is proud of them? Oof. And I know there are dads out there that say they're proud of them. And, my dad will say that occasionally, like, hey, I'm really proud of what you're doing. And I love receiving that. And through the years, especially in the past years, though, I feel like I let it sneak in, like, I doubt he's really proud of me. Like there's this feeling of like, I've got to be as good as someone else, or better, or exactly like someone besides me. So it seems like that's what we're exploring is there a relationship between success, like actual true success, and being yourself? Or can you actually even be successful if you're going to do it by trying to be someone you're not? Is that even success?
I would actually say that's the worst thing that can happen to you. I think that's the worst thing that can happen to you because it creates kind of a misery and a desperation, because you are now living a life that's a complete lie and you feel completely unvalidated. You feel like it's draining because it's not coming from a place of creativity. It's not coming from a place that you're owning or that's even authentic. It's the whole thing is just fabricated.
What if the thought I'm having is like, what if the only true failure is not being yourself? You know what I mean? Or like denying,
giving up on yourself,
giving up on you and saying, oh, I have to be someone else. Maybe that's what failure is. And yeah. I think it's worth looking too at what's your definition of success, right? Is it to have a certain amount of money in your bank account? Or ironically, is it just to feel comfortable, like to be at peace? Because usually the reason you want money in your bank account or success is so you could finally feel good, Yeah. So maybe success is really just whatever you decide it is.
I like that you point that out, because a lot of times we think about what success is and then we kind of move or murky the waters. And I'm not saying that right. But we think, okay, I want money to be successful, but then we change it so that the money is the success, but it's not really the success. We want the money to then become successful, right? But then we change what we think success is to equate or to be the money. And we get lost in that, because the truth is you can find success without the money. Just what you're saying. You can find success by just finding the peace and owning who you are and like accepting and bringing in that person, letting that person out.
Yeah. Dude, I love that. I'm just thinking of, I guess a ponder question or a normal question is like, do you feel successful right now? And do I feel successful? And I'll get your thoughts here, but for myself, I was going to say that, and let's say in the last week, how many of those days have I felt like, yeah, I'm successful? I think like one of them. Yeah. And the day I'm thinking of is a day when I had a few phone calls with clients that felt awesome. I felt like they had breakthroughs. I learned and grew myself, but I felt like I really helped them to navigate what they were feeling. And there were a few moments, weirdly enough, one of those moments is telling, this is cool, this is connected actually. One of my clients was struggling to figure out, like, he kept saying, I need advice. Like, can you just tell me what to do, or like what I'm supposed to do in my career? I was like, not really. I can't give you an advice like that. But what I can tell you is that like there is a space for you to show up as yourself. Like for you to actually shine and bring in your greatest strengths and abilities. And even, I don't know if this is like jumping the gun on these thoughts, but the way I phrased it is that our goal is to build Zion, a place of one heart and one mind. And I told him, this just like came through. I told him that like you have a specific piece of that oneness that's in you. You're supposed to bring that and create that. And that's going to be part of like this great oneness, this great family, the human family coming together. And like how sad it would be to lose that special you, to lose the you part of that oneness. Like God wants to bring it all together. We're familiar with this idea of like the body of Christ or the body of church, right? Like we are this collective group who's different, but there's important, beautiful pieces in all of us. So I'm trying to walk back to what I was saying. I told him that, and interestingly, that day I actually felt the most success I felt all week, because I felt like I was doing something that was meaningful and important to me.
I love that.
Maybe you can help me tie that back to whatever the heck we're talking about.
It's forgive me if I've used this metaphor before, but it's my favorite. It's a stained glass metaphor where when I went to Europe and England and I saw all these ancient castles and ancient cathedrals with these huge stained glass windows, and they were beautiful to look at because they were made up of different sizes, shapes, and colors of glass that all were put together to create like a mosaic or, these different images. And how sad would it be if they were all the same? Like, it would just lose the beauty of it, right? It would, it almost lose the purpose. And I feel like that's what each of us has. Each of us has a different piece of this, a different skill, a different strength to offer to the whole. And when we try to homogenize everyone's strengths to try to be the same, we lose the color. And I think we lose some of the life. It drains. It's so draining and demoralizing for anybody when they're not using their strengths and their natural talents and they're trying to be somebody that they're not. You can't do it for very long. It just takes so much more energy. And it works in this weird equation where when you're using your talents and your strengths, it gives you energy, it gives you fulfillment, it gives you purpose, right? You're creating something that comes from within, and it's a beautiful thing. Conversely, when you're trying to mimic somebody else and you're trying to be somebody you're not, you're trying to use skills you don't have that aren't inherent to you, it's the exact opposite. It takes energy. It's draining. It just leaves you feeling fatigued, and it leaves you feeling like, well, worthless, frustrated. So I guess what I'm saying is that even if you were to be successful being somebody else, copying somebody else, in the long run, it's something that's going to
leave you empty.
Yeah. It's not the success you want.
Yeah.
I keep thinking about, there's this guy I read about, and he said that he'd basically done this, and he was making 6 figures, working in New York as a lawyer, law firm, and he'd finally made partner. They came in and they gave him the talk, right? We're ready to make you partner. You've made it. He was ecstatic. They wrote down how much money he was going to be making on a piece of paper so he could see what it was going to be. And he just stopped. And he's like, okay, I need to go. I need to think about this. And he goes, if I remember the story right, he goes back to his office and he's looking at this money and he's like, dude, this is so much money. And he doesn't see how much it is, but the fact that he was like, so much money when he's already making 6 figures, he's probably making like, millions, maybe even 8 figures. Who knows? But he went back to his boss and he turned it down and he quit the company. And in his words, he said, if I didn't turn it down, once I started, I'd never be able to walk away from making that much money. And I thought it was interesting he put it that way, because what I heard is he didn't really like his job. He wasn't working from a place that fulfilled him. He wasn't using the strengths that he felt like he had, that he was copying and being somebody else. And he knew that if he took the job and started making that kind of money, he'd be locked in forever in that same cycle of being miserable and feeling drained all the time. And he knew this was his only way out, is to quit right then and there. Because if he took the money and he'd never be able to, right? And I just thought that was amazing. But okay, so do you know what's the author's name? 7 Habits of Highly Effective People? Mm-hmm. Stephen Covey. He wrote that book. And one of the most powerful principles, I mean, they're all powerful, but one of my favorite principles is begin with the end in mind, which says when you put your ladder of success up against the wall, you need to look up at the top and see where does it lead. And I think anybody who wants to be successful and isn't looking at, do I have to pretend to be somebody I'm not in order to get to the top, is making a mistake.
Okay, I love the thoughts. I can hear I can hear someone out there almost thinking like, well, wait a minute. Like, I don't even have the luxury of choosing what I want. I'm just trying to survive.
Yeah.
Like, how can, it sounds so cool when you talk about like, oh, being a lawyer or whatever, like some big job, but what about me? Like, I've got no chance of that. So I'm just destined to like survive until I die. What would you say to someone who has that thought?
That's such a great question. I love that you asked that question. And okay, so here's what I would say. That person out there is struggling under an erroneous belief that their strengths are their weaknesses. And so one of the things that I do that I love is I teach and coach people on strengths through the Gallup Strengths program. So what strengths does is it helps you understand what your true strengths are. And then with coaching that goes along with it, it helps you actually embrace and acknowledge and actually see those strengths that are showing up in your life. A lot of people who take the strengths test, they see their strengths and they want to take it again because they either don't like them or they disagree with them, which to me is just so funny because anytime you took any other test, if it told you something, you didn't care, you just kind of roll with it, right? But the fact that these people are like, no, that's wrong, I hate it, like they have a knee-jerk gut like reaction to it, tells me there's something there.
Like it triggers you.
It triggers them, yes. They want to immediately take it again. I don't like these answers. And the truth is that people have knee-jerk reactions, their strengths, their inherent, I kind of call them like, these are what your gut says to do. And anytime you're in any kind of situation that you didn't see coming, it's spontaneous, whatever, you're caught unawares, this is what you immediately go into. It's your knee-jerk reaction. And those are your natural strengths because that's your natural inclination to do that thing, right? And what people have experienced in their lives is they didn't do it correctly. They didn't have it tweaked just right. It wasn't completely in alignment with who they are, and it ends up creating a bad situation for them. And so they feel like, oh, this is a weakness. I've got to stop doing this.
People hate it when I do things this way, obsessively, whatever.
And I've been told many times, or I've had enough bad experiences that I try to stay away from this particular way of being or this particular thing so that I don't embarrass myself, I don't offend other people, because I just want to be successful, right? And instead, so they try to create something else. They end up throughout their lives getting further and further away from the person they actually are, the strengths they actually have. And so the person you're talking about who's out there saying like, I just want to be successful, like I don't have the luxury of trying to like be myself. That's because that person believes that their strengths are their weaknesses. And if they'll tap into and get a better understanding of what their strengths actually are and start using their strengths, the success will come naturally in a way that is fulfilling and brings happiness. So imagine this, instead of trying to chase success by being someone you're not, which by the way is not going to work. What if you chase success? Let me say that again. What if you were the person and developed the person you are, developed your own strengths and characteristics, and then success just came to you? Which game would you rather play?
Oh, dude. Yeah. I mean, at different times in my life, I may have answered differently. I mean, when you say it that way, though, I definitely want to be at peace with myself. I want to be in my strengths, and I want to see success as a natural result or consequence of that. I think this, it's a really interesting framework, this idea of strengths, sometimes showing up as your weakness. And I know, like, you had explained this to me when we first connected, actually. We were at a thing for our church, and we just started connecting on this idea of, oh, your weaknesses are your strengths in secret. Like, they're turned upside down. And I was like, dude, I teach that same thing to my people because I do a lot with pornography. And a lot of people, like, as I coach people to get free from porn, that's one of the great secrets I love sharing is like, dude, you've got a bunch of strengths and gifts hidden beneath that struggle. And that's the same case with any struggle you got going on. One of my favorite examples that I don't know if I've shared this with you, but because I've coached, or you've coached me in strength and I've become more familiar with it. And I got to have one of the most powerful or just like eye-opening conversations with my dad. One of his, let's call at the start, we'll say one of his things is that he likes to talk and explain things a lot. So when we'll be talking about like church stuff or history or philosophy or anything, when he wants to add in, he'll usually like talk from like way back, give you a lot of like this and this and this to help you understand that, so you can understand why he wants to say this thing, and
context.
Like, it'll be a lot, right? And there have been times when I was frustrated by that, and we'd almost like give him a hard time, like, okay, that's like too much talking. And what's so cool is just in the last several months, we got to have a conversation where I was like, whoa, Dad, what if one of your great strengths is context? Which I didn't really know that was a strength until you see what the Gallup strengths like system has to offer. I would have never considered that a strength. And that's actually the last on my strengths list, which is kind of funny. So it's something I don't understand in some ways, but it was really cool to have that talk with my dad, to be like, hey, what if that thing that we all kind of give you a hard time for, what if that's one of your biggest strengths, is understanding context? And so when you're talking, it helped me gain a lot of compassion for him, that when he's talking that way, he's actually trying to give me the thing he appreciates most, which is the context. So it's actually an act of love that he's trying to help me understand where he's coming from and where his thoughts are. And it's helped like neutralize that whole tension of like, oh, my dad's talking too much. Now it's like, oh, cool. My dad is sharing something that means a lot to him, and I can see it in a totally different way. Anyway, I'm so grateful for the strength system, because that's something I've avoided for years. Is like, I just don't know how to talk to my dad about this, and so I'm not going to resolve it. And with the strengths, with that perspective, it took like 20 minutes to resolve years of like difficult tension, whatever. So yeah, really cool.
What did he say when you talked to him about the context being a strength of his?
It was pretty cool. I don't remember words, but I remember the feeling was just like the pause and the
was
silence.
There a big like breath of like, finally somebody gets it?
Well, it was almost like he was appreciating it in himself too. Like, I feel like there was just a silence and just like, whoa, I've never seen it quite that way. And I think he also felt very appreciated. Like, even though
validated.
Yeah. Appreciated and validated.
Yeah.
It's like, even though I didn't like directly apologize for times I've gotten upset with him talking too much or whatever, it felt like a lot of that resolved, and it was like, yeah, very seen, very understood. And I'm sure there will be more that comes from that.
That validation is so huge, because that will create better foundation for your relationship with you and your father. But I think more than that, and what I love about your story, what it pulls up, is that you and your siblings all looked at this strength of your father's as a weakness. Mm-hmm. And I guarantee if you asked him beforehand, he would have said, yeah, it's this weakness. I can't help myself. I just have to do that this way.
He said that. I've heard those words.
He's actually said that?
Yeah.
Yeah. So a lot of people feel that way about their strengths. I can't help it. This is just who I am. This is how I have to do it. And they've had bad experiences. And so a lot of people try to shy away from their strengths, so they don't have those bad experiences anymore. So a lot of times people like your father would probably just prefer not to tell stories, or give really short answers, or just shy away from the entire experience. Go ask your mom or something like that, right? And instead, like, you validated the strength of your father, which made him feel really seen and appreciated for the strengths he has. And that is awesome.
Yeah, and in the context of success, right? It's like, it could have seemed like everyone was saying to my dad, you need to be more like we are and say things the way we say things.
Because we don't understand you, and we don't see you, we don't appreciate you.
Yeah,
think about heavy, that. Yeah,
it's the same scenario as you with your boss, right? You need to be a mini me. I think we do that to each other on accident. Mm-hmm. And now what I'm seeing is like, no, I want my dad to be the best him. Like, let's let him bring his whole self. Like, think about this is crazy. And I said this to my dad. I was like, can you imagine if our whole family trusted in this concept of like, I have strengths and you have strengths. You're not supposed to be me. I'm not supposed to be you. Yeah. Let's all come together and support each other in growing our strengths and appreciating the differences in the things that we're good at and the things we, the way we like to speak and show up and all those things. It could be so powerful to create that type of a community, which is that's what we've been doing. It's been one of the coolest things to see, because it started with a session for me. You helped me with my strengths, and several sessions later, right, we did sessions with me and my wife, Isabel. Then, you guys, between you and your wife, you guys get coaching on your strengths. And there's this really amazing thing where like I'm connecting more with Isabel. I'm appreciating her more. I feel like I appreciate you and your strengths, and you and Ashley, your wife's strengths. It's like one of the coolest ways to create connection and friendship. And so from there, what we've been doing is creating this group for men to come and show up in a space where it's safe to be 100% you. You can show up with your weaknesses and your strengths, and we'll help you figure out how to just how to shine, basically, how to feel at peace, how to feel successful within yourself. And it's amazing to me how much that has nothing to do with money.
Yeah.
You can turn on the feeling of success in 2 minutes if you are tapped into your strengths. And I said a lot. I'd love to hear your thoughts on any of those pieces.
Okay, so here's the thing that keeps coming up for me is there's a few years ago they came out with this personality type of survey called the love languages, right? And I've seen people try to use that with mixed success. But when I see people use Gallup strengths, it's always a home run every time. Because if you went to your dad and said, Dad, I really appreciate and love how you give me the context and the framework to understand this by taking me through its evolution through the past 50, 100 years. Your dad is going to go over the moon. Do you know what I mean? You've now validated, seen, and appreciated one of his primary strengths. He is going to really, really appreciate that.
Yeah.
Yeah. So when you know somebody else's strengths and you appreciate them for the strengths they have, that people's strengths mean the world to them, and everyone's different. And so when you appreciate someone's actual strengths, that's the thing, that's the lens they see the world through. That's the thing that means the most to them. That's the thing that lights them up. If you see that, validate that, and appreciate that for them, there's no greater compliment you can give somebody. There's just not. It goes way beyond giving gifts or touch or any of these other things, because you're speaking directly to essentially the soul of this person.
That's what I was going to say. That's your soul language. Those are the strengths that you developed. Honestly, I don't know how it all works. Like maybe before we got here, I assume, my personal belief is that before this life, I had great desires to develop certain traits and gifts. And so I practiced them. And then on this side of the veil, once I was born, I've been naturally inclined to those same strengths. Mm-hmm. So when you see someone for their strengths, it's super validating, and it's like seeing their soul and saying, I love like you, the real you. And I think that so many of our relationships are based on drama and on this feeling of like, just make sure your weaknesses don't get in my way. Ooh. You know what I mean? Like when we're nitpicky towards our spouse or something, like, oh, I hate when you do that. There's guaranteed there is a strength under each of those things that you're bothered by. They just don't know it, and you don't know it. And so if your relationship is based on weakness, you're going to be constantly coming together, trying to connect, and then hurting each other or feeling hurt, as opposed to just like opening the space and figuring out like, who are you for real and who am I? There are beautiful things beneath the surface. And I'll say this again, like before taking the test and before getting coaching specifically with you, everything you explained to me, I was like, oh yeah, that sounds okay. That sounds fine. But there's like a moment I remember in our first session where I was like, oh crap, this is something I've never even looked at. And at the time I had done like 6 or 7 years of daily working on myself, like all day, every day, almost obsessively. Like I'm going to learn about myself, increase self-awareness. I'm going to get coaching and all kinds of other stuff. Somehow I think the combination, I'll say that the combination of strengths, the program, and of your specific Shane-ness, like the way that you coach, it unlocked some doors for me that I didn't even know were there. And it wasn't even like, it was so quick. The second the door was unlocked to like seeing myself that way, everything changed. It's like, oh my gosh, this is not like a thing that comes up sometimes. This is like the way I operate all day, every day, in my actions with people and my thoughts. Like everything is based on what was in my strengths. And it was mind blowing. And there were several. So I guess I'm saying that in case anyone listening, like, I would just say you got to experience it. There's something so unique about the approach. I think it's got some inspiration behind it. Like the Gallup Strength Program is inspired. It's awesome.
I agree with that 110%. I feel like it is going to help you tap into your and really give you a direction of what your strengths are, so you know where to focus, and you're going to be able to see. Because here's the thing. The last creature that's ever going to discover water is a fish, because they swim in it. And you're looking throughout your whole life with rose-colored glasses, and everything looks pink to you. So when someone tries to describe the color pink, you're like, well, yeah, duh, it's pink. Like you can't even understand what people are saying to you. And so what strengths does is it helps you pull off the glasses and actually take a look at them for the first time. You're like, oh yeah, these are pink. Oh, now I'm starting to understand it. And it gives you the context to kind of understand and see that this is showing up over and over and over again in your life. And that's where the coaching comes in, is where someone can say, and this, and it could be me, it could be somebody else. I mean, every coach is a little different, but when I do my coaching, I try to say, here's your strengths. Here's how it's showing up in your life on a repeated basis. You're probably doing this. These are some of the habits you've shown. These are some of the things people have probably said to you. And you can just watch the light bulbs turn on people's eyes. They're like, yeah, that has happened to me a lot. And you're like, yeah, because this is a strength that you have maybe not used completely in alignment. And so this is some of the feedback you've gotten. One of my favorite examples is the guy who had the optimist strength, and how he used that. It's a great strength to have. It's definitely helpful in so many situations, but it was ruining his life because he didn't have it correctly aligned. And people, when he jumped straight into using his optimism with people, they didn't feel heard, they didn't feel understood, and they didn't feel cared for. And so simply by waiting to talk and repeating back to them so they felt heard and understood, and then coming in with his optimism, changed his whole life, right?
So cool.
Yeah.
I'll share another example for me, because I feel like at some point we got to just say, you guys got to get a session. Like, do it. It'll be so fun. We'll have information for that in our show notes. But what was so interesting is before the test, I would have told you that my greatest strength is empathy. So like, I'm very empathetic. I can understand people's, emotions and where they're coming from. And that is one of my gifts. But after taking the test, my number one strength came through as strategic, like strategizing. What's crazy is I had never, like you said, the fish in the water thing, like it's the last one to discover. I had never considered that was something that was a strength.
Or unique to you.
Or unique to me. It was so deep, and it filters, it's like the lens that I see everything through. So I thought like, oh, I'm all about relationships and empathy, like just so much empathy. But then as I took the test and as you helped me see it, I started to realize like, wait, every time I'm empathizing, I'm first coming at it with a deep strategy of like, how can I say this, or how can I show up? How can I support this person? What words can I use? And I almost like realized that I almost get high on strategizing. Like that's the way it feels when you're in your strengths, is there's this like this high and this energy. It's energizing to use your strengths. So anyway, I just have noticed that I'm even using strategy when I'm driving my car. Like I love the strategy of like, how am I going to get there? Or, how can I be most efficient? It's dumb to other people, but to me, it's exciting to strategize everything. And so.
And now that you understand that strategy is your strength and you start to, consciously use it, it brings you more fulfillment. It brings you more happiness. And I don't know, it makes your life more fun, right?
It does. And it helps me learn how to relate to others, realizing that that's not everybody's thing,
Right.
My favorite, I hated this example the first time it happened, but a funny example. My wife Isabel, our car, when you turn it off, the lights will turn off, right? If you have the lights on, they'll turn off automatically. But then if you are using the car in the day, the lights are still on. So we burn through lights like in 2 months, because she leaves them on even in the daytime. And there was one time where there was something where like she was going to be back in the car like in an hour. And so she just left the lights on or something. Like it wasn't a big deal to her because she'll just be back there soon. And to me, I'm like, why on earth would you, like, that's the least effective use of the lights and of power and whatever. And like, to me, the strategy made no sense. And it was so like endlessly frustrating to me, but to her, like, it doesn't matter because that's not even, that doesn't bring her any joy or value. And so it's been cool to be understanding of her instead of like, hey, let's fight about how you didn't turn the lights off the way I would. Maybe just like, okay, I'm going to go turn off the lights.
But you see what's so cool about that is the greater understanding of yourself creates greater understanding and awareness, and I guess we could say maybe even more empathy for the people around you as well.
Yeah.
To understand that, because everyone operates under this false idea that everybody's just like you. And when people don't act the way you think they should, because again, they're supposed to be just like you get crazy upset. You're like, why aren't you just doing blank? Right? Mm-hmm. Because it makes so much sense. It's so obvious. Why won't you do it? And when you realize, like, especially when it's with your number one or number two strengths, and you see your spouse doing something that makes no sense to you, it seems like the craziest thing in the world, that's a good indication that that's one of your strengths that your spouse doesn't have. And it's just not on their radar. And when you start to understand that that's your strength, which means that it's probably not your wife's strengths, it brings that kind of awareness and it helps your relationships all over the place.
Yeah, I think that's such a weird thinking pattern that we have, that there's a one way is the right way.
Mm-hmm.
I think another sneaky place that shows up is even in like the church culture, Christian culture, you need to be like Jesus. And I don't know, I don't have the full answers to this, but like, maybe for people at home, a thing to think on, and I'd love to hear your thoughts on this. Are you supposed to be like Jesus, or are you supposed to be you following Jesus and trying to, like, do you know what I mean? Like, are you really going to be him, or are you just supposed to, like, is there another way to say that means like be you, but like him, be the best version of you through him? Or I don't know, what's the truth there?
I like that a lot. I go back to the stained glass analogy, right? If everyone was the same, you would lose the beauty. I remember a dream that Brigham Young had, and he was watching this, I guess, herd of different goats, and they were all different sizes and different colors. I think there were some cows and some other animals, and they're just a menagerie of different animals. And it was Joseph Smith, this is after Joseph Smith had died. And Brigham Young's laughing in the dream. He goes, "That's quite the herd you have there, Joseph." And Joseph said, "Each one of them has their own place." And I don't think you can create a well-functioning and, quite honestly, a fun society if everyone is the same. It's our differences that make life fun, exciting, and also rewarding. Because everyone has something different to offer, and everyone has something different they need. And it's in the sharing of our needs with someone else's strengths that people find purpose and people find support. And I think it's honestly a beautiful system.
Dude, that's beautiful. I think there's this cool, so we're kind of revisiting the beginning question. What is success? Can you get it by being someone else? So I feel like that there's this is an opportunity basically to practice trusting that God has a space for you.
Yeah.
Like in this life, in this world, in your family, in this country, whatever you want to say, in the church, can I trust that God has created a place for me to show up as the brightest version of me? And I think that's a great first question. If you're struggling to trust that, then maybe start to look to God or the universe, whatever you believe, right? And ask, like, can you bring me some experiences to to understand the goodness that's in me, to understand that there's a place for me, or to help me trust that there's a place for me.
I love that. And I feel like that's part of what we're doing and what we're trying to create. Our men's group in True Masculinity is designed to be a safe place for men to use, tap into, and develop their natural strengths, and do it in a way where they can get honest feedback of how they can kind of tweak or align those strengths so they can be the best received, right? And get real feedback from us, the coaches, or from the other men in the group. And the idea is that every strength has what I call a balcony or a basement. If you do it in the basement, people are going to feel not too happy with you. You're going to feel ostracized. You're going to feel alone. And that's the experience some people have had with their strengths. And that's why they erroneously think they're their weaknesses. But when you start aligning things correctly, you end up on the balcony, and people will praise you. They'll thank you. They'll appreciate you when you use those strengths correctly, because you're shining bright and you're giving other people the permission to do the same.
Dude, yeah. I'm going to do one more example that you helped me to discover. My strength number 3 is ideation. So it's this ability, and I think even just like finding joy in ideas and like philosophy, or like, I want to take this and like think about it to the farthest, universal extent. Like, what does it mean in 1,000 light years away? And what's interesting about that, showing up in the basement, what that looked like for me is either sharing ideas that other people didn't care about, like, and sharing them obsessively, like, please give me validation for my ideas. And I'd find over and over that people were like, they're like uninterested. People didn't want to talk to me. People didn't seem to connect with me. They seemed to feel weird. And so they like change the subject or like leave. But up on the balcony, what it looks like is me waiting and enjoying having my own ideas within myself, and then waiting for times when people did want to discuss ideas, and then I could bring it up, and people really appreciated my ideas. In fact, I'd say that's one of the things that people value most in my coaching is I love hearing this phrase. People will say like, "Oh, I've never thought of it that way," or "I've never asked that question before." So that's one of my favorite things to bring people. But if I try to bring that to everyone, especially if I'm trying to get validation, like I'll go to my siblings or my parents like, "Hey, guess what I'm thinking about? Let me share all this deep crap that you've never, that you don't even want to hear about. Please tell me I'm valid and worth it." And it's really off-putting when people push that on you. And I understand that now. And so I save it, and I wait till people are ready to hear, or I allow them to buy in and choose into hearing what I want to share. And when I do that, there's more joy for me and more connection for both of us.
Or when people ask you a question, what do you think about this? And you take, well, here's the consequence. Here's how it could go. People are like really like impressed and amazed that you're able to do that so quickly. They're like, how did you do that?
Yeah.
To them, it seems like a superpower, right?
Dude, yeah. So I guess that's the invitation we have is for those listening, if you want to find out what are your superpowers, and maybe you have an idea of a couple of them already, but if you want to get a really concrete way to start discovering your strengths, your superpowers, your gifts, and a safe community to explore that stuff, where, we're not going to be there like correcting each other and like, "Oh, you're thinking of that wrong." It's like a shame-free, safe space to be exactly who you are, to show up as you are, and to move forward as you want to.
Yep.
So yeah, we'd invite everyone to come hang out with us. Our website and details are down in the show notes below. Please come be connected. We've got free offerings like the Facebook group, and then we have some awesome like weekly group coaching in the men's community. We even offer private one-on-one sessions if you're looking to like really change the way you feel about yourself, about success, about
your relationships.
Yeah. So cool. Anything else you'd add before we hop off?
I just want to reemphasize that this is a journey that we are on, that we're trying to figure out. And our friendship is built on the foundation of neither one of us is perfect. We're both trying to figure it all out together, and we're helping each other to do that. And we have found it to be exceptionally helpful in our efforts to progress on our journey. And we want to expand that, and provide that opportunity to other men who are looking to do the same, and provide that same environment for them to continue to grow and figure it out, to come along the journey with us. And if that feels like something that speaks to you, then we'd invite you to come with us.
Dude, and I'm going to get intense here and say, like, for anyone listening, if you are struggling to believe that you are worth loving, like if you feel like you don't have any good qualities, or there's not a real place for you, I would just invite you so hard to give it a chance, to come hang out with us, take the test, get a coaching session, and let us help you see the goodness that's in you.
Your superpowers.
I promise it's there.
Yeah.
Yeah. Have a good one, everyone. We'll talk to you next time.
Looking forward to it.
Thanks so much for watching our podcast. We appreciate it. And if you feel the call to heal the world,
starting with yourself, we invite you to join our men's group, True Masculinity. The options and details are in the show notes.
we'll see you there.